Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Low Budget Review Show. I'm your host, Eric Smith, and today I am talking about the classic, The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty. This is the 40th anniversary edition that I have here. It's the first time I've ever read this book. And I mean, what is there to say? Is there anybody who doesn't know The Exorcist, hasn't seen the movie or read the book? If you're a horror fan, well, I just read the book for the first time, but I have seen the movie. So it's the classic tale of, as I said earlier, classic tale of possession with Father Karras, Chris MacNeil, and Regan and Pazuzu. And so, for those who don't know, essentially we have Chris MacNeil, who is an actress. She's in Georgetown filming a movie, and some strange things start happening in the house that she's renting, and it seems like her daughter Regan, I think is how you say it, actually Regan, but seems to be ill. And so Chris takes her to all these doctors, these specialists, puts her through all these tests. They can't figure out what's wrong. Chris, who is an atheist, or at least an agnostic, finally, in desperation, goes to a priest, Father Karras, who has lost his faith, but he's a psychologist, and she comes to him, says she needs an exorcism. He says the church really doesn't do that anymore, but there are tests to see if it's actually needed, and eventually he's convinced that an exorcism is called for, and they call in the old priest, whose name I don't remember off the top of my head, played by Max von Sydow in the movie, to perform the exorcism, etc. That's a pretty big nutshell. Again, I think most people are going to know this story. So, I just read this because I promised F. Paul Wilson that I would start it before the end of April, which I did. I had to set it aside to read something else, but I picked it up, finished it early May. Not that any of that matters, but so the book. How is the book? I would guess most people, especially the general population, more familiar with the movie. The book took me a little bit of time to get into William Peter Blatty's writing style, and he's a very, very detailed writer, puts in a lot of descriptive types of things, gets down to the nitty gritty, but once I got into it, I found it compelling, even though I had just recently watched the movie for my interview with Dr. F. Paul Wilson. And the book is very, very close to the movie. There's some slight, very slight changes. There's a few things in the book that aren't in the movie, very few things, and there's a very few things that were sort of added to the movie that aren't necessarily in the book. But again, once I got into the flow of it and Mr. Blatty's writing style, I thought it was compelling. I wanted to keep going. I was a little upset that I had set it aside to read something else. Fortunately, that other thing that I read was amazing, and I was glad to get back to this and tear through it. So, I mean, it's a classic for a reason. I do know there are some people that don't like this book, which is fine. You're entitled. But I really, really enjoyed it. Gave it 5 out of 5 on Goodreads. I like the way the characters are written. Not saying I like the characters. I find Chris MacNeil to be a little annoying, but she's that Hollywood type, and she, even before I can say, fine, she's frustrated because there's problems with her daughter. I found some of her behavior annoying, but that's good writing. Again, as I've said before, you don't have to like the characters. Plenty of people say that. But there are people that think you do. They think all of your characters should be, except your bad guys, should be likable. And that's just not true. I didn't hate Chris McNeil. Didn't love her either. Sometimes she did things and I was like, yeah, all right, she's kind of cool. I did like her relationship with her daughter. That was really good. But I don't know how Hollywood works. I think she should have told her director to fuck off, because he was certainly annoying. But again, he's an entertaining character. Oh yeah, there is a whole subplot. I did say it was just a few little things. There's this little bit of a subplot that's completely dropped from the movie, that deals with Chris McNeil's, I want to say manservant. He's not really her butler. There's an old couple, Willie and whatever the guy's name is, Carl, who, like, Willie is the housekeeper, Carl is her husband, and he's the man about the house. What he just does the odd jobs, takes care of things, whatever. So there's a little subplot with them that is not in the movie. So that was interesting. I liked that. Detective Kinderman, because there's a death at one point, and that looks like an accident but might not be. So this homicide detective Kinderman comes in, a very Columbo-esque kind of character, gives the impression that he's sort of bumbling, and I feel like in every single scene he's in, when he's interacting with another person, that he says goodbye, starts to walk away, but then comes back in that Columbo fashion. He's very entertaining, very much like he's portrayed in the movie. And Father Karras, we get some more with, it's weird, and I keep talking about how this compares to the movie. In the movie, we get a little more of one aspect of Father Karras' life than we have in the book, but there's less of other aspects of his life than what is in the book. And I liked seeing more of Father Karras in the book. Again, they're all very well written, very interesting characters. Whether or not they're likable, that's up to you. But there are very, very creepy scenes. I kind of wish I'd read this before I'd ever seen the movie, but it's still very, very much worth reading. It's a classic for a reason. I don't know if this 40th anniversary edition is like an author's preferred edition or anything, since it's the only edition I've ever read. I don't know if there's anything at all that's different than like the first edition. Most terrifying novel ever written, that I can't say. Someone, I think I've mentioned this before, someone on Twitter once said they don't think that they don't think that a non-religious person can find religious horror horrifying. To which I always respond, that's ridiculous. I don't believe in vampires or werewolves or any of that other stuff, or ghosts, haunted houses. I don't believe in any of that stuff. And I still read books about that stuff, and they can be chilling and scary. So, just because I'm an atheist, doesn't mean this can't be a terrifying novel. It's still scary stuff. Well written. I gave it 5 out of 5 on Goodreads. Highly recommend it if you haven't read this book. So there you go. And that brings me to my question for this video, which is, should I bother reviewing something like this? Again, it's a classic. Pretty much everybody's heard of it. If you're a horror fan, I assume if you're a horror movie fan, chances are you've seen the movie. Maybe not if you're like a really young horror fan, like my nephew hasn't seen it. He's a younger gentleman. And then there are going to be plenty of horror fans who have read it. Excuse me. But I think any horror fan is at least familiar with it. Is it worth my time and yours to have me record a review of something like this? Obviously, I chose to do this one, but let's say I reread something like Amityville Horror, or Psycho, or old Stephen King, excuse me, or old Peter Straub, or whatever. Things that would be considered classics. Is it worth my time and yours for me to record a review? Because I would guess that if something's that old, people will have formulated opinion. Maybe they haven't. I don't know. That's why I'm asking. Let me know. What are your thoughts on that? Do you care about reviews for older stuff? Or I shouldn't just say older stuff, but older, classic, super well-known stuff. I know there's old, obscure stuff people might not have heard of, and that's why I sometimes do the retro reviews. And I wouldn't call this a retro review. I usually say that for books that are out of print, going to be harder to find. Whereas this, easy to find. One of the easiest books. It took me a day to get this. So what do you think? Do I need to review things like this? I mean, I don't need to review anything, but do you care about reviews for something like this? Or do you just want to hear about new stuff, more obscure stuff, things that might drop under the radar? Obviously, I do a lot of smaller publisher book reviews, and some of the big five, but I'm just looking. It's a lot of small press stuff. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put them in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here at the Low Budget Review Show. So if you want to know like a little more about the differences between the book and the movie, what was left out of the movie, that little subplot with Willie and Carl, yeah, we can talk about it down in the comments. We'll just post spoiler warnings for those who don't want it spoiled for them. Yeah, so all that down in the comments. Please like, share, and subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. If you'd care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter is @Ronan5757. My Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comic books, board games, and fuzzy animals, is Eric Smith 5757. That's Eric with a K, ERIKSMITH 5757. That's it. This has been the Low Budget Review Show. I have been Eric Smith, and until next time, read more books.